This is Keith Thompson. Well, I really do want to say, Lou said this and Mindy said this, Jeremy, when Bill passed, immediately so many people reached out to Jeremy about doing something to honor him. And Jeremy said, I don't want a whole lot of things out there. I want to do one. And I want to do it when the time is right, and I want to do it in a way that would really honor my dad. And Jeremy, you have succeeded. So Jeremy talked about the way back, the way back. And I want to say a little bit more about how Bill and I started. So Bill and I were in college together at Fredonia in 1964. And the joke was, it wasn't a joke actually. We were freshmen together, and I flunked out in my first year because I was too busy singing, didn't go to classes, all that stuff. So I flunked out. And so when Billy and I came here, we had our show together. I would say Bill and I went to college together. Billy would say, and I graduated. And I would say, and now you work for me. That was the bit. That was the bit. But the fact is, Billy never worked for me. He worked with me. From the very beginning. So the very beginning. The fact is that he was out with his group, Friends and Company, performing in lounges all over the country. And I had a group called Clint, Holmes and the Bacchanal. And we were performing it all. And we would run into each other, and we kept in touch. And then one night I was performing in Reno, at the Harrods in Reno, 3 shows a night, 6 nights a week. And I was invited on my night off to go see the headliner, who was Don Rickles at the time. So I go to see Don Rickles, and some guy walks out on the stage. I mean, I shouldn't say it that way. Some guy walks out on the stage. I don't know who he is, and he sings for 20 minutes. And he leaves. And after Don Rickles' performance, I was invited to go to the dressing room. And I went downstairs, and this guy had a dressing room. And I had 3 shows to do. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, how do you get that gig? I mean, it's like, I don't know. I mean, it wasn't, when I say some guy, I mean, I didn't know who he was. He was, I'm sure, very good, but I was jealous. So I called my agent, and I said, okay, so how do I get that gig? I talked to Earl Turner about this too. How do I get that gig where I do 20 minutes or 25 minutes, have a dressing room, hang out with the big star, as opposed to doing 3 shows a night, 6 nights a week, and having no voice at the end of it? And he said, you can't have a band. You can't have Clint Holmes and the Bacchanal. It has to be Clint Holmes. I said, oh, well, then what do I do? And he said, well, you need a musical director. You need someone who can write arrangements for you, conduct the band for you. So that's when Bill and I started talking about this idea. So I moved away from my band. Bill moved away from his band, and we knew nothing. We just knew that we wanted to do it that way. And Bill would start writing arrangements, and if I tell you, and this is the truth, some of the arrangements were so terrible. But he, we didn't know, man. He would, how many pieces in the band? 18. Okay. And so we would walk into these rehearsals, and I would sit out there, and Bill would be up there, and there was mistakes in the trumpet part and everything. But you know what? We knew that we would get there. We knew that together we would get there. And when we got there, it was on stages following for a summer in Atlantic City for a summer. Bill and I were the opening act for every comedian in the world. I swear to God, Milton Berle, Joan Rivers, Don Rickles, Bill Cosby, Rodney Dangerfield, Bob Newhart. We were the opening act for these people. So we were in the hotel at Resorts International in Atlantic City. And by now we had it down. We knew what we were doing. Bill, the charts were great. We were the coolest guys, in the world. And Bill had a beautiful brown velvet tuxedo that he would wear, conductor. So about halfway through the summer, we hear that Milton Berle, and I'm sure some of you remember exactly who Milton Berle was. Milton Berle was a huge television star, comedian back in the day, and he was already older then, right? So we've been doing this show, same show, great response, night after night, all summer, and we get a call, Milton Berle wants a rehearsal. I said, oh, are we playing for him? He said, no, he wants a rehearsal of your show. I said, well, okay, so he said, we go down, Bill and I go down to find out what he wants. First thing he says is, no one wears brown on stage. So Bill, he said, you're gonna have to get a new tuxedo. Of course, this was like the coolest thing any of us had owned, right? And so the second thing he said was, what's the first song in your show? What's the first song in your show? And at the time it was, I can't smile without you. He said, yeah, you do it too slow. I said, well, how would you like us to do it? And he said, I can't smile without you, I can't smile without you. I said, Mr. Berle, the song doesn't go like that, the arrangement doesn't, I don't think we can actually do that. He says, well, that's what I want, that, and no brown. So I called our agent, and I said, well, what are we supposed to do? We can't do what he asked us to do. And he said, well, just ignore it. So we ignored it, and we did Bill Wears Brown Tuxedo, and we did the song at the right tempo. And after the show, the agent knocked on my dressing room door and he said, Mr. Berle would like to talk to you. And I went into his dressing room and he said, you didn't change the arrangement. And I said, well, Mr. Berle, we didn't have time to change the arrangement. And your piano player is still wearing that stupid brown tuxedo. I said, well, sir, we're not going to change it. We can't change it at this late date. So, the second show, I go out, and I noticed that in the piano there was a conductor's baton. And I see it, and being the idiot that I am, I pick it up and hand it to Bill. Ha ha ha. In the wings is Milton Berle in a bathrobe with garters, the sock garters, going. It was his prop. And I was too stupid to know that. I picked it up and I did this stupid shtick. And the gig ended and my agent called me and said, well, Milton Berle says he will never, ever work with you again. So it was all Bill's fault and that's brown tuxedo. We would walk into this is Atlantic City in its heyday, and we would walk in there following Diana Ross. Diana Ross would be there for a week, and with all the dancers and all the lights and all the everything. And Bill and I would walk in there. Billy would have his suitcase of arrangements. We would walk in, and the band would be much smaller, and we didn't have a lighting cues, we didn't have costumes. But you know what, man? Bill and I had such a simpatico. We had such a musical relationship that we would overcome all that stuff. And my career is so largely because of Bill Fayne. Because I have worked with and continue to work with wonderful musicians my whole life. Very lucky. In this town there are so many. In New York there are so many. But never was anyone as giving as Bill. There was never a question. If I said, Bill, I'm not sure that modulation works, or I'm not sure that, he would go, okay, let's try it this way, let's change it, let's do this. Never ever, well, that's what I hear, that's what I wrote. Somebody earlier said about Bill being an incredible collaborator. Bill was an amazing collaborator. Bill was the best accompanist I ever worked with. And you know why? I'll tell you 2 reasons why. One, because he didn't want to be the star of the show. Secondly, because he wanted to be the support of the show. And secondly, because he was a singer. So he understands the breathing. He understands when there's a breath. He understands when the music should slow down a little bit. He understands when the music should pick up. He understood it. It was like working with another singer who was as good a singer as I was, but a much better piano player. That's the musical relationship that I had with Bill my whole career. Starting back in college, and it was a 60-year friendship, Billy and I. The other part of it is 60 years with a friend. How does that work? 60 years, through all of it, through marriages, through heartbreaks, through disappointments, some of them really devastating, through illness. Billy was sick. I forget which year, Kelly might remember, but I was performing at the Suncoast, and Billy was in Los Angeles, and we had all visited him, and he was basically in a coma. And we didn't know whether he was going to recover. We would go down there, and we'd take turns, go down to LA, and we'd just sit by the bedside and talk to him, because you don't know if anybody's. So I'm performing at the Suncoast, and it was his birthday. It was Bill's birthday. So I had this great idea. I said, you know what? I'm going to call him, and we're going to sing Happy Birthday, the whole audience. We sing Happy Birthday to Bill, and when he wakes up, this is going to be one of the things he hears. So I dialed the phone, and I heard, hello? I said, Bill. He said, yeah, Clint. I said, you're awake. He said, I am? I would love to stand up here and say that was the very moment he awoke. I don't really know that. But that was when we found out that he was out of that coma and on the way to recovery, which he was. And somebody else said, Mindy said, he's beaten it before. He'll beat it again. Well, this one went so slow and so fast at the same time. We were in New York last fall, because I was doing a show that Billy was a major part of arranging. But Billy wasn't Billy. I mean, one of our things, Ken, who came up here and spoke, we stay at Ken's place, and he's two blocks from Central Park. So Billy and I would get up and we'd have our coffee, and we'd walk into Central Park, and we'd hang out, and all that stuff. And then we'd go down and peruse what was on Broadway, and Ken and Bill and I would have these great dinners. He didn't want to do any of that. He barely made it to the shows. He would come to the shows, and then we'd say, we're going out for a drink, and he'd say, I'm tired, I gotta go back. That was September last year. October of last year, he would come over to our house for dinner and have trouble getting up off the couch. And so we all started talking, what's going on? I mean, this is like more serious than something that is simple. And he said, yeah, they're doing tests, and I don't know. They haven't found anything. They found this, and they think that because he was a diabetic, or maybe it's that. That was October. December, every December for as long as I can remember, Bill and I have done a Christmas show together. Even if he the only thing he did was come up and sing "Oh Holy Night," he would do that, right? And so he said to me, I don't know if I can. I don't know if I'm strong enough to sing that song. I said, of course you are. Come on, buddy. He was so thin, but he did it. And he hit the high G, and shook. And after that, that's December. That's December. By January, we all knew there was really something going on. And the tests came, and the tests went, and I can't give you the date, but he called me one morning and he said, I think I'm dying. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, I think I'm dying. I can't get up. I can hardly breathe. And of course, Jeremy, all of us said, well, we call 911, and get him into the hospital. And he got into the hospital. And we would go visit him literally every day, And some days were good, some days weren't, but we again had hope. They were telling him, well, you have cancer, but I think, we can do this, we can do that. Then he got out of that and he went into a rehab center. And I remember so clearly one day, Earl, myself, Antonio Fargas, Kelly, we all went over to sit, and he was sitting there talking about what the Yankees were going to be like this year. And talking about what was going to be on Broadway and what he was excited. It was talking to Bill. He just happened to be in a rehab center, but it was talking to Bill. It was a Saturday afternoon. When his time ran out at the rehab center, we all, Elaine, who I'm so sorry can't be here today, and I basically scuttled around to try to find him someplace to go, someplace to rehab between him getting better, him getting treatment, and him getting on the road to recovery. He was in the rehab center, I think, for a day. And he had a crisis. And he went to the hospital in an ambulance. And we all went. And that's when we all knew he wasn't going to beat this, right? And Jeremy fought, come on, Dad, fight the fight. But we all, I think, Jeremy, am I right? We all knew at the same time. Yeah. That the fight wasn't there. And that he understood that really the best he could hope for would be to be like this, you know, with a few more treatments, a few more drugs, a few more things. But this was it. And he kind of looked at the story Kelly told about that day that he said, you know, you're my best buddy, and Jeremy, I love you, and tell Elaine to forgive me, and Kelly, don't make me laugh. That day, that was the last conversation, if you will, we had. Because he said, get me out of here. He said, Jeremy, get me out of here. Get me to a place where I don't have to go through this stuff. And we got him to Nathan, out of Jeremy. I did. Jeremy got him to Nathan Allison Hospice on a Monday, right? Monday night, maybe even a Tuesday night. And we went over to see him. And he wasn't there, kind of. The next day, Jeremy called and said, today, gotta get here today. I was so honored to be with Jeremy, Kelly, and Elaine, sitting with Billy when he breathed his last breath, and so many things, so many things. Not only a lifetime of friendship, but a lifetime, a great lifetime. Billy was music. Billy loved nothing more than collaborating. Billy was my freaking best friend through 60 years. No matter what our lives were, we fought, we disconnected, all of that stuff. But Billy's heart was always ready to take me back, and my heart was always ready to take Billy back. So that 60-year friendship was the friendship of my life. And I miss him. Every time I see the Yankees on TV, I want to pick up the phone and say, hey buddy, you know the Yankees are on. Josh Allen, the quarterback for the Bills, was interviewed on TV the other day, and I'm like, hey, I wonder if Bill knows. So I don't know when it comes to believing what's next for any of us, right? And that's the other thing I did want to say. We were all holding Bill when he passed. And my face was this close to his. And I looked at him, and I said, that's my buddy, man. And that's going to be all of us one day. And what I pray for all of us is that we are surrounded by friends and family, because I do think, believe me, we were there. And I do think it meant a lot to him, as much as it meant to us. That moment when he breathed that last breath. I believe that. So I wish that for all of us. I'm sorry. I forgot what I was about to say. Anyway, okay. So I get to sing. Jeremy asked me to sing. So this is a song that Billy and I wrote. And I would say, we wrote a lot of songs together over the years, but I would say that probably of every song that we wrote together, this is the one that meant the most to both of us. Because the song is about what Bill's life was about, what my life is about, and what so many people in this room's lives are about. So I will do my best to get through this.